Ever been curious about how a dash of sales savvy can spice up product management? Or what it's really like juggling the worlds of hardware and software? Well, get ready to dive into some game-changing insights that'll turbocharge your product management career. Meet Ansul Rajkaria. Ansul has moved from sales to product leadership, and he's here to show you how you can improve your sales skills to ensure product success and boost your product management career. Now, coming up in this episode, what you can learn from product leaders with a sales background, the importance of sales skills for product management, and hardware and software product insights, bridging the gap between hardware and software teams. So, Ansul, we know that you have an extensive experience in sales and product management. Now, taking the experience you've gained from being in sales, what mindset should product managers adopt in order to excel?
I think, when I was in sales and when I used to work with other salespeople, they are very empathetic with customers, right? They really understand the problem the customer is facing on a day-to-day basis. And they understand the capacity and the willingness the customer has to pay to solve that problem. And if you translate that to what a product manager has to do, he has to basically understand what product or solution will actually solve that customer problem. And I think that experience and that learning that you can get, being very empathetic with what a customer goes through, can really make up what I said, excellent versus a okay product manager.
That's an interesting observation. Let's expand on this a little bit. So then, what do you think product managers can learn from sales when needing to ask the really hard questions about making an actual sale?
Yeah, there is this thinking of what we call challenger sales model, right? So the traditional sales model is, you pitch your product, etc., without even understanding the customer problem. And now that equation is switching, right? It's basically you want to spend the first, I would say, 70% of your time with the customer to really, really understand his problem. And the only way you can do that is by asking questions, right? Asking open-ended questions about what are they going through, why are they going through, what would ideal solution look like, and how much are they willing to pay, and what's that timeline looking like, right? Those might be hard questions to start with, but ultimately it leads you to better solve that problem in the long run, right? So I think customers actually love that. Even though you are asking them to open up, I've seen customers, their eyes lit up, and finally they see somebody's listening to it. And I think that is probably the right approach in my experience, where I've done sort of both things together.
Wow, that's a really fresh viewpoint. I love it. But what other lessons can be learned from sales and then applied to product management?
When I was in sales, I was very impatient, right? I was impatient and everything seems to be on fire. Every customer request or concern, it almost seems to be on the highest priority. But I think as a product manager, we need to realize that we have limited resources, right? We have a set of engineers that we work with, and we need to kind of distill down on what is noise versus what is reality and what is the impact on the business, and be a little bit more long-term and strategic thinking. And I think that's the piece that, when you're going from sales to product management, just be aware of it and figure out how do you prioritize efforts, because if everything is a priority, nothing is a priority.
Okay, that's a valid point from the sales versus product mindset. How then would you adapt prioritization?
Yeah, there are a couple of qualitative and quantitative factors you look for, right? So, we love 2x2s, right? So, on one axis, you can put, hey, what's the market opportunity, right? What's the long-term opportunity? And then what is our ability to win in that market, right? How quickly can we deliver on that? And typically a combination of two is what you want to go for, right? So you want to start focusing on opportunities that have the highest, that are the biggest, but also something that will quickly deliver on, right? So, those are the two main vectors. And then there's some other areas you might think about. Does that fit in the overall strategic direction of the company we are taking to? Is it a competitive differentiator, etc.? And I kind of go through that list on an annual basis. I think the big thing about prioritization is you will not make everyone happy, right? Some people will be unhappy because their request did not make the list. And I think as product managers, we have to be very transparent about which are the requirements we will work on, and more importantly, which ones we will not work on and why, and have that candid conversation with the sales team, right? I think when we've done that, I've seen salespeople to be much more, I would say, collaborative in the effort and less disappointed. But if we start pushing everything down the road without giving that transparency, I think that creates a little bit more disappointment than actually not doing.
The message that I'm seeing, it's also about communication and building relationships. It's not just about the prioritization. Am I right?
100%, right? I mean, and generally for any function to do, communication is very, very important. But it's open, honest, transparent, and then and the other piece is being very credible about what you say, right? So having a very strong sort of say-do ratio of what you say versus what you do, I think that really helps in building the trust factor.
Okay, I'm interested to know what lessons have you learned through the transition to being a product manager?
As I mentioned, in sales, the good thing was things used to move much faster, right? But when you come in a product management, the number of stakeholders that you are involved about making decisions about product, they've actually exponentially increased in terms of you work with the quality team, the industrialization team, you work with your engineering team, you work with your business development team, your marketing team. So the number of people you end up working with to make a decision, I think that is much more than what I'd expected. So I had to sort of pace myself down, honestly, because in sales, it was this go, go, go. You have a bunch of products in a basket that you want to sell. And it was a much shorter, I would say, iteration. Here, these are longer iterations with a lot of stakeholders involved. And I think that was a learning curve that I had to adjust to, right? And then the second thing, as I mentioned, why it was a humbling experience, is the amount of time and effort it takes to really create a product, I think is undervalued, especially when you're in the front office and you're in front of the customer. So I think those were the two big learning experiences that has helped me grow in this journey.
That sounds like an incredible journey. Could you expand on what it's like being a product manager in the hardware space versus just a purely software product?
Yeah, I mean, a good way is think about hardware is being made of atoms, right? Physical atoms versus software is digital code, right? And so there is physical reasons why hardware by definition is hard. I think the main difference, the key differences in hardware and software is how agile you can be when you're actually creating a hardware product. Because it's in order for you to create a hardware product, you need to set up factories, you need to set up industrial lines, you need to have a different, I would say, quality and testing process, etc. So the time it takes to build from zero to like a prototype can be anywhere between 12 to 18 months, right? So that time is extremely long. It's a little bit more inflexible compared to a software. And in terms of the quality, etc., I think that's very important. The other piece is that, once your hardware is out, I cannot just go and fix it over the air, right? When there's a bug in a phone, we get an update that, hey, there's a bug, I can correct it. But imagine of a hardware product that you're using on a day-to-day basis. I have to physically take the product, go to a warehouse and fix it. So my threshold and bar for quality has to be extremely high because the pain of replacement in a hardware is extremely high, right? And then obviously you have to work with actual physical manufacturing that happens, understand some of the labor laws where our factories are going in. So all of that may not be as apparent that when you're doing in the software industry. So culmination of different things, but I mean, those are the big things that we face on a day-to-day when we're looking at a hardware versus software.
Okay, I'm interested to know your thoughts on how to manage the hardware and software teams, especially in terms of coordination and goal alignment.
Yeah. So it's a tricky balance. It's definitely a tricky balance because typically your software is going at 100 miles an hour and your hardware is going at 30, 40 miles an hour, right? So the speed itself is a little bit different. And again, so we try to understand we try to align our stage gates as much as possible between hardware and software. So stage gates are basically milestones, right? So when you're running a marathon, you have these mile markers that keeps you motivated and make sure you're going in the right direction. Similarly, most product development processes have stage gates, right? And they can go with different names depending upon, might be a company terminology, right? So it's important that at every stage gates or checkpoints, you make sure the two are aligned as much as possible. So I think that is one way in which we do it. The second thing is, since we've moved into this agile development, we get customer feedback on a frequent basis. And so when we are getting the customer feedback, we try to combine our hardware and software pieces together, right? So that when we are going to the customer, we are not talking about it separately. And that keeps the team closer to understand what is the ultimate problem we are solving for by looking at the two together. Those are some of the ideas that we sort of collaborate on in making sure it's going in the right direction.
As we wrap up, what do you think are the biggest pitfalls for a product manager in your experience? And what do you think the best ways that they can improve in those areas?
Yeah, I might be a little bit biased coming from sales, but I've seen at least, again, we are originally an engineering-driven organization, right? So a lot of our ideas are inside out, right? It's coming in from the company and, we think, hey, this is a great idea. But when you actually try to pitch it to a customer, it's not solving a real problem. So that's how we say it's innovative. It's an invention, but it is really innovative or not, right? So being very clear on any ideas that you're coming out, making sure it's solving an actual customer problem, right? So that's one. Second pitfall is I feel sometimes product managers, and sometimes I'm also at fault, is we don't spend enough time with our customers, understanding how they use the product, why they use certain products, etc., and really, seeing that behavior on a more, I would say, closer basis, because that can actually help us understand really what is working, what is not for the customer. And third is, you need to make sure you have your key stakeholders aligned. The success of the product is when all the different teams work together, whether it's sales, product management, engineering, etc. And the less siloed you are and the more sort of you are coordinated in the effort, the higher the rate of the success.
Well, you can connect with Ansul on LinkedIn to stay updated with his insights. I think he's got a lot to share. And if you're excited about more knowledge on transforming your product management career, be sure to watch the video I did with Lee Steed Middleton, who also talks about how we can learn a lot in product from sales and also monetization, acquisition, and retention. I think Lee is awesome, just like Ansul. A special thanks to Amplitude for the invaluable partnership in producing this series. Until next time, from me, Ross Webb, bye for now.